There are lots of questions surrounding the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, which will probably never have a definite answer. But I think that two of the most common questions would be, what is the movie about and what is the meaning of the Star Child? And those two questions could also be seen as one, as they are certainly linked to one another. And while I will not pretend to know what the answer is in a literal sense, I am pretty sure that I know the thematic context in which it is embedded, and the answer to that is given right at the beginning of the movie. As most of you probably know, the music is called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Zarathustra was an Iranian prophet of the Zoroastrian religion, which became the dominant religion in ancient Persia. But more importantly, the title is a direct reference to Friedrich Nietzsche's famous philosophical story of the same name. And I read the book 2 years ago, but it only now occurred to me to make a connection between the book, the music, and the movie. And I think that the result is quite interesting. I will not pretend to have a deep understanding of Nietzsche's work, since as of now I've only read one book from him, but I will try as good as I can from what I remember reading and hearing about him. Nietzsche is also famous for his quote, "God is dead," and I understand this as him saying that the Enlightenment has killed religion or God. And although Nietzsche was a critic of Christianity, the death of God poses a moral dilemma for him, because along with God, Western civilization has lost what had once been its moral center. His book Thus Spoke Zarathustra therefore becomes the answer to that moral dilemma. In the book, Zarathustra makes many travels and meets all sorts of people and comes to the conclusion that human beings are incapable of filling the moral void that was created with the death of God. He sees man as a transitionary state between apes and the so-called Übermensch. The Übermensch is a being that morally overcomes and surpasses mankind, and it is a being that leaves behind all negative traits of the human species. And we can find this evolution in 2001. The movie begins with the dawn of man, shortly before man's climb on the ladder of evolution. The journey begins with the appearance of a strange monolith that sparks man's first technological discovery. And then in one single cut we get thrown through millions of years of evolutionary and technological progress when humans are about to conquer space. The second encounter with the mysterious monolith on the moon sets the stage for the next evolutionary step. An expedition is organized to track down the origins of the monolith, and to that purpose the ship's crew is assisted by the most sophisticated tool ever created, which is the artificial intelligence called HAL 9000. Now look at what HAL's physical representation looks like. It is a copy of the shape of the monolith, and I think that we have two things going on here. One is man's obsession with technology after his initial contact with the monolith, and the other is maybe man's subconscious desire to recreate that missing God through technology, and to put it at the center of his existence, which might be the reason why HAL, who is humanity's greatest creation so far, is made to look like the monolith. But technology does not provide what they hoped for. Technology is all around them and is supposed to improve man's existence, but to me the human characters in the movie seem to be emotionally very detached. Even when they should be angry, afraid or desperate, we do not really see any of those emotions on display, at least not to the extent that we would expect. Most of the time they behave themselves with some kind of rational and cold politeness. And it is quite ironic that HAL is the most emotional entity in the movie, although his existence is ruled by pure logic. It is as if technology has made humans hollow inside, comparable to the moral void that Nietzsche saw with the death of God. And worst of all, the surrogate god HAL betrays them and kills all but one of the ship's crew members. Let me mention on a side note that HAL's betrayal might be visually foreshadowed in the movie. And maybe my interpretation is a bit of a stretch, but I think that it makes for an interesting thought at least. HAL's red eye or lens is located at the bottom of his rectangular shape, whereas in most shots of the monolith, the planets that the monolith is pointing towards are situated above it. This puts HAL and the monolith in direct opposition. Whereas one leads to humanity's improvement, the other is ultimately just another instrument of destruction, much like man's first technological discovery. So technology didn't prove to be the answer that man had been looking for to fill that hole inside him. The answer must then lie within man himself, and for that he has to outgrow himself like the Übermensch in Nietzsche's Zarathustra, which is what happens when the last surviving crew member, David Bowman, travels beyond the limits of infinity. Shortly before his death, the monolith appears again, and Bowman is turned into an infant who then travels back to Earth, and without words, but once more with the music of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, we know that this is no normal human being, but a more sublime entity. Mankind has now become the Übermensch. Maybe you are asking yourselves now, why did Kubrick choose the theme of the Übermensch for his movie? I don't know if I am correct, but I have an idea. The film was made during the Cold War, when the threat of a nuclear war was very real. And the movie might therefore be a warning against relying too much on technology and making it our surrogate god while losing our humanity in the process. Maybe he wanted to advise us that we have to improve ourselves and become better than we are if we want to have a future. And I think that this fits perfectly well with the concept of Nietzsche's Übermensch.